Did you know that Canada's global image is shifting in 2025? Once seen as a friendly and reliable partner, Canada is now facing tensions with several countries that were once its allies. Trade disputes, political disagreements, and shifting alliances are making headlines. Some nations are cutting economic ties, while others are imposing restrictions on Canadian businesses and policies. In this video, we'll break down 10 countries that are distancing themselves from Canada and uncover the real reasons behind these growing tensions. Stick around until the end, because the number one country on this list might surprise you. And if you enjoy content like this, hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated with the latest global insights. 10. Brazil. Brazil and Canada are no longer seeing eye to eye. One of the biggest points of contention, the Amazon rainforest. Canada has expressed concerns over Brazil's deforestation policies, while Brazil insists that its agricultural and mining sectors need expansion. In 2025, Amazon Conservation reports that deforestation in the Amazon jumped by 25%, leading to international criticism. In response, Canada cut down its imports of Brazilian soy and beef by 12%, angering Brazilian trade officials. While some in Brazil believe these policies are necessary for economic growth, others worry about losing valuable trade partnerships. The situation remains tense, with Brazilian policymakers debating how to respond to Canada's growing restrictions. If this continues, trade between the two nations could take a serious hit in the coming years. Saudi Arabia. Tensions between Saudi Arabia and Canada have been simmering for years, but in 2025, things took a serious turn. The main issue, Canada's strong stance on human rights. Saudi Arabia has long faced criticism for its treatment of political prisoners and press freedom. Canada had been vocal about these concerns, and this has led to a 10% drop in trade between the two nations. In retaliation, Amnesty International revealed that Saudi Arabia tightened restrictions on Canadian companies, making it harder for them to operate in the kingdom. Canadian investments in Saudi Arabia dropped by 15%, especially in the energy and tech sectors. While some Saudi officials argue that these measures will make their economy stronger, others fear that losing Canadian partnerships could harm business opportunities. Will these two nations find common ground, or will the divide continue to grow? China. China and Canada have had a complicated relationship, and 2025 is proving to be no different. Canada has been vocal about supporting human rights movements in China, something that Beijing sees as interference in its internal affairs. In response, CNBC noted that China increased tariffs on Canadian products by 18% and introduced new restrictions on Canadian businesses. Trade between the two nations has fallen sharply, dropping by 14% in the first quarter of the year. The biggest industries affected? Seafood and lumber. Canadian businesses that once thrived in the Chinese market are now facing roadblocks, higher costs, and more government scrutiny. Meanwhile, China is shifting its focus to domestic production and other trade partners, leaving Canada with fewer economic opportunities. With Canada's influence in the Chinese market shrinking, the big question is, can Ottawa mend relations, or will the divide deepen even further? India. India and Canada's relationship took a turn in 2025, and politics is at the center of it. The main issue? Canada's handling of separatist groups. India has long demanded stricter actions against separatist movements based in Canada, particularly those linked to Punjab. However, Canada insists on protecting freedom of expression, which India views as a threat to its national unity. As a result, trade relations have suffered. As highlighted by Al Jazeera, economic cooperation between the two nations declined by 8% in the past 6 months. Canadian investments in India's booming tech industry dropped by 10%, slowing down joint projects. Public opinion in India is also shifting. A growing number of Indian citizens believe Canada is undermining India's stability. With tensions rising, it remains unclear if Canada and India will be able to restore their once strong partnership. 6. Russia. Canada's support for Ukraine and strong sanctions against Russia have led to a major fallout between the two nations. Russia sees these actions as direct attacks on its economy, and in response, it has reduced exports to Canada by 12%. As reported by CBC, Russian officials have also frozen 10% of Canadian investments in the energy sector, making it harder for Canadian firms to operate in Russia. With these barriers in place, Canadian businesses involved in oil, gas, and technology partnerships are taking a serious hit. Economic analysts predict that if relations remain this cold, trade between Canada and Russia could shrink even further. Will Canada's firm stance on global security come at the cost of its economic interests? That's a question many Canadian policymakers are now facing. Are you finding this video interesting? Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss out on our latest insights into global affairs. Also, let us know in the comments which of these diplomatic tensions surprised you the most. 5. Mexico. Canada and Mexico have been longtime trade partners, but recent policy changes have put their relationship under strain. The biggest issue? Labor disputes and immigration policies. In 2025, Canada tightened work permit rules for Mexican laborers, leading to frustration in border towns and economic sectors that rely on seasonal workers. As a result, applications for temporary work visas dropped by 9%, making it harder for Mexican workers to enter Canada. On the trade front, things aren't looking great either. Mexican exports to Canada fell from $5 billion to $4.6 billion, as new tariffs and trade restrictions made it harder for Mexican goods to compete. Industries such as automotive manufacturing and textiles have seen significant losses, with companies struggling to maintain sales. Public opinion in Mexico is divided. Some believe Canada's stricter policies are harming trade and labor mobility, while others see this as a push for Mexico to build stronger ties with other nations. Will Mexico and Canada be able to find common ground, or is this the beginning of a long-term economic shift? 4. Turkey. Canada and Turkey's diplomatic relationship has taken a hit due to conflicting foreign policies and military trade disputes. The main point of contention: defense contracts and military interventions. Turkey has accused Canada of interfering in its regional military operations, particularly in neighboring conflict zones. In response, Turkey suspended major defense deals with Canadian firms, leading to a 14% drop in exports. Industries such as aerospace, technology, and industrial machinery have felt the impact. Bilateral trade dropped from $3.7 billion in 2024 to $3.2 billion in early 2025. Turkish officials argue that Canada's stance on human rights and arms embargoes is hurting their defense industry. Meanwhile, business leaders in Turkey are worried. A 10% fall in Canadian investments has slowed down industrial growth. Experts warn that if this continues, Turkey could shift toward stronger partnerships with European and Asian markets, leaving Canada behind. 3. France. France and Canada have historically maintained strong relations, but their differences on climate policies and trade agreements have caused friction. One of the biggest issues: Canada's continued fossil fuel exports. French policymakers who strongly advocate for renewable energy have criticized Canada for not moving away from oil and gas fast enough. In response, French imports of Canadian oil and gas have dropped by 7%, as the country looks to Europe for cleaner energy sources. The tension doesn't stop there. Canada and France have also clashed over social policies and global governance issues. A recent Canadian statement regarding religious neutrality and freedom of speech was met with backlash in France, where leaders saw it as unnecessary criticism. French public opinion is also shifting. Surveys show that 60% of French citizens support stricter policies against fossil fuel imports from countries like Canada. With these growing disagreements, France and Canada's future as trade allies is uncertain. 2. South Africa. South Africa and Canada's relationship has become increasingly strained due to differences in international policies and governance approaches. One of the key points of friction is Canada's foreign policy stance on global conflicts. South African leaders have accused Canada of applying double standards when it comes to human rights and trade policies. This has led to an 8% decline in South Africa's imports of Canadian goods, while South African exports to Canada have also dropped by 5%. Trade sectors such as mining, technology, and pharmaceuticals are among the hardest hit. Canadian investments in South African industries have declined by 12% as companies reconsider their long-term commitments. Public opinion in South Africa is shifting as well. Many citizens believe Canada's approach to global diplomacy does not align with their nation's vision for fair international trade. As tensions grow, leaders from both nations are under pressure to find a middle ground before relations decline further. 1. United States. It might come as a surprise, but Canada's closest neighbor, the US, is also facing tensions with Ottawa. The United States has adopted a more protectionist trade policy in 2025. leading to higher tariffs on Canadian goods. These changes have had a direct impact on Canadian exports, which have dropped by 6%. The biggest industries affected: lumber and dairy. American tariffs on these products have increased by 10%, disrupting cross-border trade and forcing Canadian businesses to look for new markets. Beyond trade, political disagreements are adding to the strain. U.S. lawmakers have expressed concerns about Canada's independent stance on China and Russia, arguing that Canada is not fully aligning with North American strategic interests. Public sentiment in the U.S. is also shifting. A recent survey found that 52% of American voters believe Canada should work more closely with the U.S. on foreign policy. Meanwhile, Canadian leaders argue that maintaining independent policies is key to their global reputation. With trade barriers rising and political tensions brewing, Canada and the U.S. face a new challenge: maintaining their long-standing partnership despite growing economic and diplomatic ties. Though Canada and the U.S. remain allies, the cracks in their relationship are widening. Will diplomacy heal the divide, or is this the start of a long-term shift? From Brazil to the U.S., these 10 countries are distancing themselves from Canada for a variety of reasons, from trade conflicts to political standoffs. While some tensions may be temporary, others could redefine Canada's place in global politics and economics for years to come. Which of these growing tensions surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more global insights. Up next, 10 countries that are kicking out immigrants in 2025. Click now to watch.